hopefully going to be changing the system soon and figuring out, what percentage of an increase in a budget there needs to be before it's reviewed by council. I think 100,000, I don't have any reference to other municipalities, but when projects are in the millions, 100,000 seems reasonable to me, because if it was 50,000, they would probably be having to be checked every couple days, because things happen that are really expensive on large projects like the pool and this parkade, things like that. I'm still disappointed in the price of the parkade, because I think we could have done a lot more with that amount of money. And it's disappointing when we have people sleeping on the street and, this is what we're using our money for, but I'm glad that they're looking into it now, so.
Mhm.
They've gone, what, 5% for a project up to 100,000, I think. So
Yeah.
your point, Mackenzie, it's a bit of a sliding scale. And I can tell you, I've just submitted an infrastructure application, and they're looking for a 25 to 35% contingency on our class 3 estimates, which essentially means at the point where you're going in before you've awarded bids, you need to plan to have that extra buffer of 30%, which seemed like a big number to me. And I wonder where that's being applied to municipal projects. But I think we're going to find out a whole lot more than any of us ever thought we were going to find out about municipal projects and how those operate.
Yeah, they're a bit of an animal unto themselves. But that begs the question, Tracy, like, do we need to change the culture of how that cities have to drive a lot of these projects? There's with the parkade, there's been concern over the years with the city gets involved in doing these parkade projects. This is the second or third one now, and do we really need them? And are we just being bowled over by a developer who says, "Oh, I can build this, but I need you to do this"? Do we need to be a little tougher in that regard?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I have never been in a city planning role. Having watched it for years on the outside, we've had trouble attracting, in particular, high density housing into that downtown core. And there have been lots of projects and lots of times where cities and municipalities give tax breaks or they contribute to projects. And I'm presuming that the idea is to long-term tax revenues, both from property taxes and from increased habitation and activity and economic generation. I think that's part of why we have municipalities, is to make these strategic sorts of decisions with a long-term vision for what we want in certain parts of the community. And the very first thing I did when I moved here in '92 was I got hired to draw drawings for rehabilitation of 3rd Avenue. I mean, we've been talking about this for a very long time with downtown revitalization, and George Street has really turned around. Yes, we're having issues, as Mackenzie spoke about, with people that are homeless. But when you look at the businesses that have invested down there, that's all new development. And an awful lot of that is predicated on municipal investment in private development. But again, I'm speaking as an outsider. I have never worked in those areas.
Chuck, there's certainly people in town that sort of, question how much time and effort we do put into fixing up downtown, and there's also others that kind of suggest, well, maybe we should just leave it be, and whatever happens there. And I've seen those comments, and it's kind of tough. And I know Lynn Hall on his press conference earlier this week, we asked him about whether the project was worth it, and he kind of went on that bent that he campaigned and on doing something downtown and on attracting development downtown. And it is happening, and it's regrettable that this has happened. But overall, the scheme of it, or the idea of doing that, is a good one. Should we continue to try to get some of these big projects downtown?
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that we get some of these projects, underway downtown. And I know that it's important for the city to give incentives for developers to go ahead with these things. But a lot of the comments I've read about this have been, why is the city involved in doing this parkade, et cetera, and it's people just don't understand the process and how you do get people to get into developing an area that you want developed, right? And as far as I understand it, this parkade was just that. It was, okay, if we're going to do this building, then you have to come up and do this parkade for us, you know, and that's the way business is done, you know, private and public business is done that way. And people have to realize that. Could it been done better? Most definitely. But, you know, I mean, it had to be done to get the big condo project that they wanted built downtown. This had to be taken care of. And in the long run, it would benefit all those businesses down in that area as well. So,
And
yeah,
maybe,
I mean, it was a good plan to have it, you know, but yeah, something went awry along the way. So we've got to figure out that. But
maybe
yeah, I think we really do need to do these
it's
things.
the right way to go.
What was that, Tracy?
Maybe taking the lowest bid every time isn't the right way to go. I mean, it's easy
Exactly.
to take bucks and then bill up all the way through the project. So I feel like it's at that front end where we're talking about attracting a project, assessing how the city can contribute, what that assessment of value is going to be in return to taxpayer. And then when we bid something, I don't know. I think it's all tied to this weird desire, particularly in municipal politics, to avoid any kind of tax increases. So when you do have municipal projects, there's huge pressure on staff to take the lowest possible bid in order to be able to allow the elected officials to hold the line on property taxes. And I think it's a false economy. Taxpayers want all of these services, but they don't want to pay for them. So I think to Mackenzie's point about people getting involved in politics, it's people need to be educated about what's going on in their communities, understand how it's funded, and then get involved to ensure that their voices are being heard. But they need to be informed. It can't just be a free-for-all in the comments section that decides on people's futures, or you do run into take the lowest bid and hide the fact that it's going to cost more or whatever the heck happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's always there's all kinds of games that go on in there too, right? Because developers will bid low and then it's a cost plus contract, right? So it's oh yeah, well we'll build you that sewer, but oh yeah, now you got to pay for the price of the pipe, so that's going to cost more, blah blah blah. So yeah, so I guess the other part of it, Mackenzie, maybe is it do we need better people at City Hall? And I hate to say the word term better, but more qualified people at City Hall to work on some of these things. We do have engineers, and you know, Walter Babich, who's the acting city manager now, he's a lawyer. You know, it seems like we have good people there. They're professional people, but how do we avoid some of these things or can we avoid them with different people or better people?
I don't think so. I think that we need to really look at, you know, the people that are working on the projects, and we need to not label every single person that worked on this project as incompetent. We need to figure out what went wrong, and it's not a group of people. It's probably not one person. One person doesn't have control over all of this either. It's not, you know, so we need to, I think we just need to become more educated about politics as the population and the general population of Prince George that is very upset about this. We need to educate ourselves more on how these things work. And then people that are in charge of this project, people that are elected officials, need to really look at the culture and the way that we create projects and what our priorities are in the city, you know. And I just think that throwing the baby out with the bathwater, is that the saying, is not the best idea. So I think that we need to do a full review. We need to not jump ahead of ourselves and be labeling people, you know, as we need to find a better person for that job. I don't think that that's it. We have educated people in City Hall. I think that we just need to figure out what went wrong here with a full deep dive of the problem and go from there.
Chuck, do you have confidence that a deep dive, the way they're doing it, is going to find some answers?
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, if it's done by a competent and reputable forensic auditor, I don't see why it's not going to find what the problem was. Basically, you follow the leak, right? And it'll lead you to the problem. So they should just be able to walk back along and go, hey, this is where we spewed a whole bunch of money, and who approved that and why? And we'll be able to figure it out from there. As for, do we have the people? I know a bunch of those people down at City Hall, and there's some very bright people. You know, there are brains that are way bigger than mine down there, and they know what they're doing. But somewhere something got messed up along the line. So let's just go find out what happened, and then we can go from there and decide what's the best way to make it all work. Maybe it was just you know, a hiccup, a one-time hiccup that let these things through, or maybe it's just a way of doing things that is not working properly, is they're not working through the problem properly. It could be either. It could be someone who just went, oh, I don't care, just do it. We don't know. Until they go through and they figure it all out, we're just speculating. So we just got to let them go through, search it through by the numbers, and figure out how it all happened. And once we got the facts, you can go from there. But you're not going to go anywhere without any facts. You know,
I think it's
do all the things that everybody's commented on on the Facebook, etc. But it's not going to get you anywhere until you know what the problem is.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's possibly what, I don't know, I guess they could call it do-gooder syndrome. I think a lot of people there that look at these projects and like, these are good things, we got to get this done, we got to get this done, and sometimes that blinds you into the reality of how to get it done. You know, I got to add something onto my house, I got to add that extra room on my house, and then you get started, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, it's going to cost you another $100,000, which I don't have. So, you know, then you get problems. And then things are started, and then once they're started, you can't back out. So that puts City Council in a tough position. Tracy, speaking of City Council, what do you think the political fallout of this will be? You know, do you think that we're still a couple of years away from an election, so it's hard to say what re-election impacts it will have, but do you think there's going to be a political fallout?
It's hard to say. I wish people would quit worrying about re-election and just do the jobs they were elected for. And I think that the folks in the comments section should quit worrying about whether they're re-electing somebody at this moment or not, and wait for some answers. I have often bemoaned the fact that it feels like so many elected officials at all levels of government really get elected and then spend their entire time in office worrying about whether or not they'll get reelected. And I don't feel that that serves constituents well. So do I think there'll be political fallout? I don't know. It's hard to say. It's still 2 years out. We don't know exactly what happened here. And I really do believe that people are owning this. You know, ultimately, there's probably, as Mackenzie said, lots of people involved in the whole process, but city manager's gone, and the timing can't be 100% coincidental. I just don't believe it can be. And our mayor has stepped up and said, I'm going to find out what's going on here, and I'm going to tell all of you that. And I think if it came back that there was some egregious overlooked point at city council, that yeah, then you will see significant political fallout and people will be unelected over it. However, if in fact what it was that the organization has grown up around itself, I mean, Prince George is only 100 years old. It's not like we had as large a group working at City Hall as we do today, even 20 years ago, probably. So you could easily have systems grow up that probably would not have been put in place if anyone had thought about them at the front end. So I think if we can change the way things are done, change the systems themselves, and tell everybody exactly what did happen, there doesn't have to be political fallout. I'm okay with mistakes as long as they own them, fix them, and tell everybody about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mackenzie, what are your thoughts there on any fallout, or whether whether we should punish politicians when they make a single mistake. Although I shouldn't say mistake here. I don't think any of the politicians did anything wrong. They just simply didn't know. And I guess that you could argue that's a mistake too, that they didn't know. But so
I feel like we talked about this 2 weeks ago as well. The politicians that we elect are not experts in every single field, and that is why we have the people that work underneath them. They do need to be asking questions, and they did. That's why this has come out. So I'm happy about that. I don't know what's going to happen in a year and a half. I don't have a crystal ball. So, so I'll be interested to see. I do think that it is a ways away. And if they really dive into what happened and they're honest about it, and everything is figured out, and they are working to change this system so that we have accountability in projects like this, I don't think that there will be a giant fallout. I think that people also tend to forget. It's a year and a half away. People literally forget what happened 6 months ago because we don't have enough political involvement in our communities to remember what candidates have done or people, elected officials, have done in the past. So I think that we also need to work on that as the public, and hold people accountable and look at track records and not just look at what they did 4 weeks before an election, because that's what people look at. So I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on both sides. We need to make sure that, yes, we're holding our politicians accountable, but also if they make mistakes like this, and things happen like this, we need to not just be firing them all immediately. We need to really look at what's happening.
So what you're saying is we have to cancel culture.
Well, I don't know. I feel like we just need to know that there's nuance in these conversations and to not be so black and white when it comes to Facebook comments. There's a lot of education around politics and how things work in our city, our province, and our country that we need to work on as a society.
Of course, the first resignation call I saw came out of the editor of The Citizen, and that's not someone in the comment section. That is someone with a platform and with a constituency following along. So we can't just talk about the comments. This is community-wide.
Yeah, and just my reaction to that was that that was an overreaction. I think Neil went a little over the top there. I think I mentioned this a week or so ago too, is that he's had a bee in his bonnet about expenditures at City Hall for some time, and some of it's been good, some of it's been just, okay, you're grasping at straws here. And
you know what? Can I add to that, Bill? I think that it's good that we're questioning things. I think that it's good that these things are coming to light and that people are, Neil is writing this in the paper so that people are questioning it and they're learning about it. But I think that we also need to be careful, how much we're jumping on that. Like, I do think that was a bit of an overreaction because we don't even have a report yet of what has happened. We don't even know why the city manager left in the first place, right? So I think that there's just a lot of things that we need to find out, and more transparency in government. And it's just every level of government. I think that this is a good example of that we just don't know enough about every single level of government. And that's why I've been talking about adding more education into the education system about politics online digitally in the last couple of weeks, because people just don't know enough about everything that's happening. And I think that is a huge piece where young people can start learning about it. Then they become educated voters. They will continue that on the rest of their lives.
You're bang on, Mackenzie. My youngest, who's 22, keeps talking to me about it. He's so mad at his friends because they don't understand what taxes are for and why they're for and what they do with taxes. And it just upsets them. And I say, well, you grew up in a household where we talk about politics and we talk about those things, but not everybody did. But I learned it in school, and you're right, they don't teach it anymore. So this goes all the way back to pulling the humanities out of elementary school and what that does to society and to educated public discourse.
Yeah, you're so right. I grew up in a political household as well. So I'm agog sometimes that people go through their lives and they're unconcerned, but still concerned enough that when they go to the pump, the price of gas is high. When they go downtown, there's potholes in the street, and they don't connect the two, that what's happening in places like City Hall here, where people get together every 2 weeks to hash things out in public, that is what's determining what's happens in your potholes and all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
that's very true. It's so funny. I lived in a family that was totally apolitical, right? I like no political thought at all. I went to journalism school and thought I'd be the next great writer, right? And they said, you got to take pictures. So I started taking pictures and I loved it. I fell in love with taking pictures, right? So there I am sitting in political science class, looking out the window going, oh my God, I'd rather be out there taking pictures. But you gotta listen to that political science class. You really gotta, otherwise you're not gonna understand what you're taking pictures of. So yeah, all those humanities classes and social studies classes that you checked out of, you've gotta check in because it's important. It comes to root now. You know, this is the stuff that they were talking about that you weren't listening to.
And the interesting piece to me is the largest cohort is Mackenzie's generation and the generation. Are you a millennial or are you a Z?
I literally debate this every day because I'm 97, so I don't know.
My daughter. So you guys are, I think you're the last millennial.
Yeah.
But those two cohorts are huge numbers. And there's such an opportunity, particularly in an area like where we live, the level of access that you have to elected officials at all levels in all parties is unprecedented. So we need people in your age group to get educated. So I think it's important.
I think that social media is helping a lot. I know that there can be downsides to it, but the amount of educational information on apps like TikTok, I am on that app all the time. Most of the content I see is educational content, and it is incredible. It's a creative way to make videos about, I make videos about Green Party policy, and people follow me to learn more about policy in a way that is not reading a 50-page platform document. So I think that we really need to also get creative and get young people involved in politics in a way that is fun for them. And you know, like there's so many things that we could do, but we're just so stuck in the past. And when you want to bring forward a project like this, usually it's young people that want to bring that forward. Well, who's in charge of the project? Usually an older person who says, oh no, that won't work. So we really need to be, you know, letting young people take the charge on projects like this and let them get creative when it comes to political education, because opportunities are here and it's growing very largely on social media right now, but the people in charge need to be okay with us trying new things.
So just do me a favor, and when it's your generation in charge, make sure you put the humanities back into elementary.
Yeah. I'm on it.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to get on TikTok. I don't know. I'm not there yet, but
You don't have to dance. Don't worry. I don't dance. I
don't
literally just like put words on the screen and it's good. It's good.
I'll have to try that.
Mackenzie, watched him try and go Facebook Live. You really think he's going to figure out TikTok?
Yeah, it could take a while here. So
When COVID's over, we can have a coffee and I'll show you.
yeah, right on. But I'll get another plug in for another thing that's missing in all this. It's not missing, but what I guess it is missing is journalists. You know, we talk about a lot of these things that happen at City Hall, and you know, a lot of this information was readily available and publicly available. It's buried in municipal in finance and finance and audit committee reports that you know, are an inch thick. You know, you talk about 200-page platform documents. Same thing at City Hall. A lot of that information is in there, and what we don't have these days, especially at the local level, is people who are going through those reports with a critical eye. You know, and we just, as journalists, there's too few of us left anymore, and that takes a lot of time to go through those documents, and they're not easy. They're, you know, you need to be an accountant to figure out half the time, and all that kind of stuff. But you know, you can go in there, and my experience is you can go in there, and if you question something, you ask them at City Hall, they'll find an answer, or they'll try to find an answer. You know, so yeah, more journalists.
I think also it's not appreciated, because I know some of the journalists and like news reporters in town that run some of the other news outlets, and they're sent hate mail for being
Oh, yeah.
journalists. And I mean, you two both have experienced this, and I think that that deters people from wanting to get into it, because you know, they look at a comment section on Facebook for a news site and they say, oh my gosh, if I worked there, I would have to deal with this all the time. It's not, we haven't created a healthy culture or space for people to want to get into this or want to get into politics. It's the exact same thing. We need to change the way that we look at these types of careers so that, you know, they are healthy spaces where people want to go, because good people don't want to get into politics because there's bloodshed. It's terrible. So we need to change the culture, but I don't know where we start. Like it's really tough, because the culture is so big that if a few good people are elected, they're up against an army, right? Like it's going to take time and perseverance.
But it's things like this, Mackenzie. I mean, I remember ages ago, you telling me that you voted for me in 2015 and you ran against me in 2019, and we're here today having this conversation. And that's the way it has to be.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. And I think, Mackenzie, you're very right that there's the bloodshed fear for journalists, but there's also, it's economics which has stripped us of our journalists too. The new media, the new way of doing things has made newspapers trim and trim and trim. All media outlets have trimmed and trimmed. And you don't have the Paul Stricklands and the Marilyn Stories that used to spend hours and hours poring over reports from City Hall. You know, you'd go into the newsroom and Marilyn's desk would be piled full of papers of obscure things that she demanded that City Hall gave her so that she could read through on how everything was done, you know. You don't have the people, they don't have the time anymore to do that. And that's a real shame. This is where we get into these kind of problems, you know. We used to have people that kept everybody on track. When I was in Medicine Hat, we had a lady there who I think the mayor actually flinched every time he looked at her.
Oh, Ben Meisner to mind.
There you go. That's exactly it. Another Ben. That's it. You know, it was just like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, you're thinking about me. Okay, I'm gonna make sure I got this all right. You know, and you know, it's hard to keep that level of watchdogging when you don't have the time and the money to keep those people around.
And it's the social media, the culture change too, right? You know, it's hard to report on something in 280 characters, even if you do a thread. You know, and I remember the debate when Twitter first came out in the journalism world. You know, like if you go to a meeting, should you live tweet it? And you know, there's a lot of people, you know, half was split. Well, yeah, because you're getting stuff out right away. You're telling, okay, the mayor, you know, he you know, he scowled at somebody or something like this, and you go on. But then there's the other part of it. When you're doing that, you're not getting the entire picture of everything that is going on at the meeting. You're focusing on little things, and you know, and I've done it too. And it's hard because when you start typing on something, you can't concentrate on what's happening. And I think as a journalist, you really need to concentrate on the overall picture. So you have to absorb it all, and then you write your story. That's why I'm not on Twitter as much as I probably should be.
Live tweeting would be a great intern job if only our newsworms had enough staff.
We need two. That's what I was just going to say. I bring two people there. One is doing big picture and one is live tweeting. Then you get both.
Yeah,
that would be ideal.
Yeah, well, you know, they do it. You know, Hannah Peterson for Prince George Matters. She covers city council and she live tweets it all night. This week, Andrew Kuryata was doing it, and I sit there and I can't do that. Maybe that's part of my older mindset, right? It's like I can't concentrate enough to do that, and I can't work my phone quick enough either. So
it's okay. Tough. You can be the big picture guy.
Yeah, I'll be the big picture
Andrew
guy.
And Hannah and Jess and all them can be quick live tweeters. Yeah. It's all good.
See, that was the same problem we used to have with when they started saying, well, you know, we won't send a photographer to meetings anymore. We'll just have the reporter take pictures as well. You know, and you've got a reporter who's following everything very closely. And then all of a sudden they go, oh, geez, I got to grab my camera and take a couple of pictures. And they take the pictures and they lose track of what's going on. So, you know, yeah.
And the pictures stink.
What was that, Tracy?
Sorry?
And the pictures stink.
Yeah,
And
well,
yeah.
I never said
Kind
that.
of multitask.
Yeah, to that point too, the other thing that people aren't realizing is that our history is not going to be retained the same way. I have a massive collection of citizen negatives. I've got PG This Week, and I've got a lot from the Free Press. And it's taking Dave Milne's picture where he's written all the stuff on the back about who is in the photo and why he took the picture. And, you know, all of that is such a treasure trove for researchers down the road. So, you know, 100 years out, when people are looking for that museum collection of day-to-day historical images, they are not going to exist. Certainly not in the way they used to.
I think that they're not going to exist like they used to, but also we are Instagram living everything, we're TikTok living everything, and everything is on record when we're, you know, going to like BLM rallies or, you know, the attacking of the White House. Like those are all on record because everyone was live, and that footage is now in the cloud forever. So I think that there's, you know, newspapers might not really be coming back and it's dying, but it's changing into, you know, these things are now being turned into digital forms of sharing what's happening live. And I think that we have to not resist it, because then we're going to be much further behind when everyone else is already on Instagram or TikTok, Twitter, sharing these things. And there's a couple people still saying, no, I want to fund my newspaper. We have to keep the newspaper. So I think that we need to embrace the change, because otherwise you're going to be behind and everyone else is going to be ahead of you, already figuring out how to use it. And you're going to be like, okay, well, I'm a little bit late to the party. Can you show me how now? So I think that we have to encourage young people to get involved in journalism. Would be a great example. And, you know, they can be the ones figuring out the new apps and learning from older people who have been doing this for a long time. And that intergenerational learning is incredibly important. I'm super happy that we have 2 young counselors on city council now, and maybe more in the future. But I think that it's crucial that we also have, you know, people that have been there for a while so that we can learn from each other.
Yeah, my point though is not that we need to stay mired in newspapers. I was speaking specifically to the photography side of things, because as an art person, I would lament the loss of a professional photographer whose attention to detail is just as important as that journalist.
Totally.
You know,
I was just adding to the,
our most iconic images are coming out of photographers like Chuck or Dave Ma or Dave Milne. You know, those images tell a story. And it seems the ultimate irony to me that we've moved into this highly digital, highly visual world where people want 1,000 words in a picture. And yet we have completely eliminated professional photography from day-to-day news. I think it's short-sighted, and I don't know if anybody's really recognized it yet.
I think it's gonna have real repercussions soon. I think it's starting to build. People are beginning to realize that, oh my God, we're not getting those images that we used to get. You know,
yeah, I think a lot of the digital stuff's great, and there's some fabulous photographers out there. And the videos you're talking about, Mackenzie, I think are super important. I just can't imagine as a curator looking for an exhibit going through even just all the footage from the insurrection at the White House. I can't imagine how you would go through that to find the image that told the story without having that journalistic photographer's eye applied to it.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's exactly it. I mean, you've got zillions, literally, of images, but how many trained eyes did you have looking?
Yeah,
you know,
to pick that one that tells a story. That's
yeah.
the challenge. And I know I got berated by several photographers for picking the wrong one of their photos sometimes. But
Don't do that.
Chuck could probably sympathize, but or placing it in the wrong spot in the newspaper, not giving it the right due it required.
Oh,
but,
no, we suffer quietly. We never say a word.
Yeah, I haven't met a quiet photographer yet. So anyways, switching topics a little bit, but on this same sort of thing, when we talk about the Capitol riots, we talk about Twitter, and it just sort of occurred to me that, I just want to get everybody's idea on Twitter and the social media tech giants banning Trump and some of these other things. And the debate is this a free speech thing or isn't it? It's, whoever wants to jump in on that one.
Okay, I'm all for this one. All right.
Okay.
Twitter is a business. Okay, and it's all more powerful to them to get people talking back and forth and doing whatever they can and getting all sorts of things, stirring up the Twitter sphere and making it more profitable for them, showing that they are more powerful. But it's a business. They can also decide who they want, where they want, and what they want. And if they want to cut somebody off, they can do that. And I think they really resisted very well that urge for 4 years, pretty close, until it got to the point where Trump was causing damage. And I think then they went, okay, we can't do this anymore with our platform. It doesn't feel right. And that's when they pulled the plug on him. And I think they had every right to do it. I really do. And I kind of wish they'd done it earlier, like 3 years earlier. But yeah, they have the right. And I think people can't say that it's their right to use Twitter or their right to use Facebook. No, you sign up and you give them the power over what you say. And if they decide that they don't want to use it, you've got no recourse. So yeah, I think they had the right to do what they did.
Tracy, are these social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, are they so large now that they are the public domain? In which case it would be free speech? I guess that's kind of the debate.
It is. It's an interesting debate because Chuck's right. They're a private company.
Yeah.
And so they have the right to set their own standards and set their own controls. And if the public feels that they are stomping all over free speech, don't use them. Honestly, I agree with Chuck. I wish Twitter had shut him down a whole lot longer than they did. And I felt like they were the only grown-up in the room during the insurrection. I was very glad that Twitter shut him down. And I've really been appreciating the peace and quiet.
Mackenzie, you got some thoughts on this?
I mean, I think that we all agree, like it needed to happen a long time ago. I mean, the tweet that I saw that was a throwback the other day that he tweeted was when he told AOC to go back to her country. Like, yeah. It's fed into this divisive racism, homophobia, everything, every ism, and like you've seen it all from him, and I'm surprised they didn't do it earlier. But I think that it's a bigger question. I think the question that you said was, have they become what did you call it? Like the public domain. So if you don't use the social media to share your stories, where can you reach people? Like, how can you share something that has happened if they have taken it away? Not talking about, like changing topics, not talking about fascists on Twitter, get rid of them. But when we're talking about people that are sharing stories, like on TikTok, they shadow ban a lot of people, like Black creators that are trying to promote their businesses. And all of a sudden, their views drop to 0 and they make another account and they say, what happened? Or people are, booted off because they started talking about politics in a way that the app didn't like. I think that we need to really look at this from the big picture and say, what have we created in society that we have such a monopoly on 5 or 6 social media accounts that every single person is on, and the people that are running them, there's like 2,000 billionaires in the world, if we look at there's a really good Netflix show that I watched the other day, and it was about billionaires, and it was about, you know, the people that are running the world, really. Like, they have, if all of them combined, they would have $11 trillion. They would be, they would have trillions of dollars. They would be the 11th richest country in the world, if they put all their money together. And I think this is just a really big question of, like, who are the people that are running these apps that every single person is on, and what are we able to talk about and what aren't we able to talk about, and making sure that it's equitable for people that obviously aren't doing hate speech, but like, that's like a different conversation. But I think that we also need to be looking at our society as a whole and what capitalism has created, because this is what we have now. So we need to question it and figure out what the best way going forward is to be able to share news and be able to share our voices and not be shadow banned if we said something that the person that owns that company doesn't like. So
I think if you look to history and you look to things like the development of the printing press and the Gutenberg Bible, that had distribution and control over a huge swath of society with no external input outside of the church. I suspect there were very similar conversations happening when the printing press moved into enough ease that the general population learned how to read. And the folks that were in charge then were not all that happy about them learning how to read, because it allowed for the exchange of ideas.
mm-hmm.
In my mind, I've always thought of the internet essentially as a glorified library, and I still feel about it that way. So when people have a channel or they have a page and they're populating it themselves, it's almost like a pitch to a publisher or a printer in some ways. And that's just how I've always viewed it. So I think that the content is user created, and I don't know, banning someone from Twitter, I don't think is the same thing as refusing to teach someone how to read. I can see real parallels between the kind of conversation we're having about social media giants right now and the level of influence they have over society, and the development of the printing press and particular publications like the Gutenberg Bible or Mein Kampf. Like, there's lots of stuff out there in human history that points to propaganda, that points to easily accessible and digestible information. Whether it's right or wrong is almost beside the point sometimes. I don't know that we need to control them necessarily, so much as we need to recognize that we're going through an adaptation period as a society and adjusting to this level of access and information exchange. No different than when all of a sudden we could print books and flyers and move ahead from the town crier.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Tracy. I think it harks back to the 1800s when newspapers were coming to the fore, and it was the same thing. Newspapers became part of daily life, and everybody looked to them for their information, and they could say whether they wanted to talk to so-and-so or not. If you look at Fleet Street and the problems there with the publishers getting mad at such and such a company or so-and-so in government and not carrying their views and only carrying someone else's views, and it's all the same, right? This is just a broader channel, a wider stream of information that newspapers could only wish to have been able to do, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly right. So yeah, I see it all the same kind of thing. Again, I say the content is out there without any education behind it in a lot of cases. And that was the case way back when. It managed to fix itself over the years. A lot of the small newspapers and magazines and things that were put together by so-and-so and his buddy got ejected eventually and went by the wayside. But I think we'll see that happen too with social media. I think there may develop to be two levels of social media. That's kind of what I'm seeing starting to develop now. the journalists that are out there are starting to pull things together in a tighter group and into more trustworthy media, while the fringes are still throwing stuff at you left, right, and center. Hopefully it will develop more and it will become more of a trustworthy media, but it's going to take time, and we're in a growth period and a learning time, and everybody's still trying to flex their fingers and flex their muscles and decide what's what and who can use what and who reaches what the best. And it's a mess, but I think it will clear itself up eventually, hopefully, anyhow.
And I think a lot of it comes down to education, because a lot of this stuff is propaganda, whether you go back to Mein Kampf or the depending on your religious feelings, the Gutenberg Bible or the Gutenberg Press and all that kind of stuff with the religious printings from the 1700s. It's about power and it's about education, and you need both you need education to gain power, and that's part of, I think, for me, one of the sad things about Trumpism is that there's so many people in this day and age that don't seem to be educated enough to see through a lot of that stuff. So I don't know where we go from here, but to me, it all comes down to education.
I agree. I really do.
And on that note, we're pretty much up to an hour. So parting words from everyone. Mackenzie, let's start with you. Anything you want to plug before we're done?
My TikTok.
Do a dance. There you go.
Yeah. No, I don't dance on my TikTok. That would be terrible. I just want to encourage everyone to enjoy the snow we're finally getting and go outside and stay safe and go snowshoeing and stay in town and don't be traveling right now. And I think, is today the hot chocolate day for Big Brothers Big Sisters? I think either today or tomorrow.
Could be, yeah, it's probably today.
So there's 11 restaurants participating and they're having a hot chocolate off so you can pick which one is the best. So I encourage people to do that as well.
Chuck?
Okay, well, I do dance. I love dancing. I'm not on TikTok. Just everybody stay safe, stay home as much as you can. I know it's boring. Trust me, it's boring. I really wish I'd put my motorbike in the family room now. But okay. We're almost there. We're getting through it. Winter is being very cooperative with everybody. So let's enjoy it. And, just social distance and enjoy what we can. And we will get through all this. And spring's not that far off.
There you go.
That's my mantra. Spring's close. Spring's close.
Spring is coming. Tracy, any plug there?
Yeah, actually, Exploration Place and the Canadian Association of Sciencers launched in partnership with a whole whack of national partners right across the country on the 25th, the #ScienceUpFirst initiative. So this is really to further the conversation we were having today about checking your sources and making sure that the information you're sharing on all platforms is coming from an evidence-based source. So please check out my own social media feeds or the museum's social media feeds. And when you see that #ScienceUpFirst, you can feel very confident that the content has been fully vetted by people with a much bigger brain than me or Chuck. So you can trust it. Please share it. Please share it, share it, share it, share it. We want to flood all social media channels with good information. This is specific to COVID-19. And the first chunk of this is around vaccine hesitancy. You can go to the webpage that's been set up for it and sign up to be one of the volunteers. And then you will get sent all of the content direct to you and you'll be asked to share it as a first person on your own social media. So I encourage everyone to take part.
I'll give a plug for Cold Snap, which is getting underway on Friday with Maureen Washington. If you've if you've never heard her sing, she's worth the price of admission, which for Cold Snap this year, because it's virtual, is nothing. So there you go. But they've got other artists like Barney Bentall and Alex Cuba lined up. So, and it's all virtual. So if you're stuck inside in the next few weeks, check out Cold Snap. And I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Thank Tracy, Chuck, and Mackenzie for participating again. And we'll see you all again next week.